on this episode, Meg Lousteau.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me.
Sure.
You are so intelligent that you're going to bring
thank you.
yes, that you're going to bring such knowledge to this show that when I speak with you on the French Quarter, it's absolutely, I mean, it's super interesting. So you were with the VCPORA.
Right.
That's
UCRA property owners, residents, and associates.
okay. So residents. So if I was wealthy and could live in the French Quarter, I would give to this organization. You're the neighborhood association of the French Quarter.
We're a neighborhood advocacy organization. So we have been around since the 1920s, incorporated in 1938.
Okay, since the 1920s.
Yeah.
So like
quite some time.
Tennessee Williams was a member of yours.
You know, I don't have the
possibly?
records going back that far, but I would hope that he was. We try to advocate for what we believe is in the best long-term interest of the French Quarter as a neighborhood.
As a neighborhood, so not as Disney World.
Exactly.
So because when I walk through the French Quarter, I mean, but it always feels like an event when you're in the French Quarter. Does that make sense? Like when you're in, and maybe you're there all the time or
Right.
whatever, but even me, and we could walk to Jackson Square right now. Jackson Square is so impressive. It's nothing says New Orleans like Jackson
Well, it's
Square.
probably just that it's such a special place, and there really isn't any other place, even in our city, that is like the Quarter, because it's so old, it's been so well protected, and that is something that you sense immediately at probably every level when you're in that neighborhood.
And that's really interesting too, because the French Quarter is the pre-everything, right? So the French Quarter is about 50 years ahead of the rest of the city. Is that kind of because it got a head start?
There's Algiers Point, which is the second oldest neighborhood, and there's Tremé where I live. So we're all very old, but the French Quarter is obviously where it all began.
And so something, and of course the biggest thing right now that I want to talk to you about is the short-term rentals and the Airbnbs
Right.
or whatever. So the French Quarter is definitely like, I guess, the canary in the coal mine for the rest of the city. Like, hey, pay attention to what's
Right.
going on in the French Quarter because it's coming to your neighborhood
Absolutely.
eventually.
And that's been the case not just with the short-term rental issue, but with a whole bunch of other issues. We get calls from other neighborhoods all the time on everything you can imagine, but we've especially been a resource for other neighborhoods on short-term rentals because the Quarter's been dealing with it for over 20 years.
I was about to say,
Yeah, for
before
quite some time.
Airbnbs and stuff, people were renting out
Right.
rooms in their house, I guess, in
Right.
the French Quarter for a while.
And I just want to be really clear with your audience, it's been illegal to create new hotel rooms or expand existing hotels in the French Quarter since 1969.
Okay.
So the recent legislation that was passed at the city level, it didn't create a ban in the French Quarter, it maintained a 48-year-old ban in the French Quarter. We worked with a number of other neighborhood associations and civic groups across the city trying to get some kind of restrictions on short-term rentals in those neighborhoods. And we're not successful
Because a
on that.
hotel, and this is so simple to me, because a hotel is a hotel, and a home is a home.
Right.
And
It seems straightforward to me too.
and there's
what is a
certain
commercial use?
commer-
and what is a residential use?
right, and because you can see this, and trash piles up in front of these houses
That's just one of many problems.
because you don't have a here at St. Roch, we have trash pickup multiple times a week, not just twice. They may come every day and pick up trash. I don't know, but it's a commercial trash pickup. You don't have that on homes. And that's a tip of the iceberg.
Sliver,
The
right.
sliver of this. So the ban is now, like you say,
It's being enforced.
It's being
It
enforced.
has been enforced for decades, and we really were never sure why. We would go to the city with, photographs and listings from websites, and the city was just refusing to enforce the existing ban in the French Quarter for many years. Now that the new legislation has passed and went into effect as of April 1st of this year, the city has been doing an amazing job of enforcement. And in
Okay.
the Quarter, enforcement is more cut and dry because it's pretty much you can or you can't do it. In other neighborhoods, it's been not as clear cut, but they're still making a tremendous effort and have brought a lot of the scofflaws to heel, which is great. The problem is that the laws that we have are just far too loose, and they have resulted in the creation of or the conversion of many housing units in other neighborhoods to de facto hotels.
Well, because, okay, so you live in Chermay, Hayes, which a lot of people know from the program. He was in a previous episode,
Okay.
but he lives right by Bufas. You live, he lives right on the other side of
the quarter.
the quarter. He lives
92.
essentially, so do you.
Right.
So you're on the other side of Rampart. He's on the other side of
Esplanade.
Esplanade.
Uh-huh.
Well, in your neighborhood, it's like a free for all. In his neighborhood, it's
Yeah.
a free for all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because now that the enforcement is in the quarter, y'all have
Well, the
exported the
enforcement's
problem.
everywhere, and I,
Okay.
we didn't export the problem.
Yeah.
We finally succeeded in getting the rules that had been in place enforced, and we're very grateful for that. We wanted to make sure that other neighborhoods had the same kind of restrictions to keep from happening what is happening, what we knew was going to happen. I mean, in Chermay, right around the corner from me, there's a block of Ursuline Street. When I moved in 14 years ago, there were 16 households on that block. Now there are 6
Wow.
because of short-term rentals.
And what does that do? Because so from a business standpoint, and I'm going to speak from a coffee shop business standpoint, in a place that does get frequently referred to as a Airbnb food court. But and I joke about that. But you know, we do have our
Sure.
we have a lot
People
of
who are here in
regulars that
town for whatever reason need coffee.
and they come through.
Yeah.
And so maybe those, but you know, I do have my regulars, but you know, the Airbnb people do like
Right.
help promote my business as well. So there's you know, I would hate to see it go away totally. I shouldn't say that, but you know, from a business standpoint, it's good because people that are here on vacation are spending big monies on lattes every morning, and I'm just a little, and I'm a nobody in this, so I can't imagine like a real business.
Well-
like they must bring in a lot of money from this.
I mean, I'm obviously coming at this from a neighborhood and neighbor perspective, not a business perspective. And I'm sure that there are some benefits to some businesses, but you'd probably have a lot more regulars if there were more
Sure.
full-time residents
No
living
doubt.
here. So
And you've been in the morning. You know our regulars.
right.
You know tear up the place. So it's you know. And I love to actually poke fun of the fact that I'm the Airbnb food court because we kind of are, but we're really not because we do have our local.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And again, the people who are coming here are not inherently bad. There's nothing wrong with them.
And they don't
But what's
know.
happened to my neighborhood?
And they may not know.
Some
right?
of them don't know. I mean, there has been a lot more press, especially in the national media, international media, about what happens when Airbnb or short-term rentals are allowed to they're not regulated or they're not regulated well. And they
Okay.
take over neighborhoods and they turn what used to be a neighborhood basically into a tourism zone.
Right. Well,
And
because it's
that's
a
what's-
hotel. You've got
That's
the
what's
same.
happened in my neighborhood.
I mean, yeah, you got the whole neighborhood and it's sprawled out, so it's not like the Mont Leon that's in a tower. It's sprawled out over this whole neighborhood. That's essentially
Right.
this particular thing.
Right.
So where do we go from here? Like, because people that there's, and the argument is if I have a if I have my other side of the double and I
Right.
want to do it, I'm making more money than
That's
a resident.
legal.
That's legal.
That's legal, and I think that
Is that where it's going? Is that going to continue to be legal?
Well-
Where do you think it's going, I guess is the question.
the biggest problem that we're seeing right now is with entire homes being turned from residential units into commercial de facto hotels.
The
whole house, where there is no owner on site in the other half of the double. And this is ostensibly what the city was trying to prevent when they created the temporary category in this whole permitting system. It says that you can only rent the place out for up to 90 nights a year. Well, 90 nights a year is almost every weekend, and that's
Yeah.
really the primary time when these places are rented out. One of our board members is a retired economist, and he ran some numbers, and if you and I were both trying to buy the same house for $350,000, it's list price, and you, Kevin, we're going to live there with your family, and you're running your numbers like, do I have enough
do.
income? What's my down payment going to be? And I'm an investor from, I don't know, Dallas. And I'm thinking, well, if I run my numbers, I think I can make $36,000 a year doing this short-term rental, and that's under the 90-day cap.
That's under the 90-day cap.
It makes financial sense for me to pay $513,000 for that house. Who do you think is going to get the house? And then you are going to have a harder time buying a house because I just set a new comp for the neighborhood. Because the real estate market, because of the way we have legalized this, they don't distinguish between commercial and residential now, and this is a commercial use. So now commercial property values are competing with residential property values, and the residential property market is getting worse. So there's one less neighbor in the neighborhood. You have a harder time buying a house, and now there may be people who don't want to live near that house because it is
It's
a hotel.
In a hotel.
Yeah.
You've got bachelorette parties going on in that son of a gun all the time.
And even if they're not bachelorette parties, so everyone likes to point to the bad actors. They call them, we have to deal with the bad actors. Like, I'm on a block with 4 houses. One of those houses used to be a home to a family. Now it is a short-term rental. So 25% of my block is now people that I don't know, that don't look out for my 94-year-old neighbor. You know, the rest of us do. Like, is Miss Jessie on the stoop tonight? She's not. Let's go knock on her door.
Yeah.
You know, they're just not neighbors.
Yeah.
Whether they're, you know,
Whether they're
they're
loud
bachelor-
and noisy, they're not
Right,
neighbors.
they're
You
not
don't know.
neighbors.
Yeah,
And that is really, that's the problem. And
So do you see it? So I guess, yeah. So let me go back to my original question. Where is it going? What's the next legislation that's going to happen? Because you're the canary in the coal mine. So
Right.
what is the next thing the city's going to do?
Well, I think those of us who've been very involved in the short-term rental issue and debate were heartened by the recent elections because candidates who won in District A, District C, and at large were very clear about this having gotten out of control. The legislation that the city has put in place has resulted in things that we all said, all of us except people who are involved in the industry and making money off of it said, no, we don't want it to go this way. So there's been a lot of talk amongst even current council members and among incoming council members about what can we do to rein this in. And one idea is to tie this so-called temporary category to a homestead exemption.
Okay.
So that, you know, if you did want to rent your house out for the summer because you and your family wanted to go to Mexico or Ireland or something,
right.
you would be able to do that.
Oh, but I have to
Investor
have
Meg
a
from
home.
Dallas would not be able to
Can't
come
do
in and buy 20 houses, which is what is happening. There are short-term rental operators who have hundreds of units in New Orleans.
Wow.
Some have 10, some have 20, but the point is that these people do not live here. They don't live in those houses. They might even live in Metairie. They might even live uptown and have a place that they're doing it elsewhere in town. But when you don't have an owner on site, it's a completely different level.
Yeah, I can see that. All right, so we could do a whole show on
We
that.
could.
But let's move on from
Okay.
that. Because I want to talk about 2 particular streets. First one I want to talk about is Rampart. Because I brag about Rampart Street to everybody. I'm like, you have got to see how pretty it is. I just remember as a kid, you know, Rampart Street,
Yeah.
and Rampart Street today is beautiful. I am a pro streetcar guy. It's just beautiful. The businesses, it's walkable. It's overnight change. What's next for Rampart Street? And how does that Rampart Street anchor in the back end of the quarter in a nice way? How does that change the rest of the French Quarter?
Well, our office is on Rampart Street. So
Your office is on Rampart
For 9
Street.
years, I have been watching Rampart Street every single day. And I think there's a lot of potential for development now in Rampart, particularly and unfortunately because in the 1940s and 50s, or the exact date, but the city council illegally exempted Rampart Street from the control of the VCPORA Commission.
Oh.
So all those vacant lots on Rampart Street, all that surface parking on Rampart Street happened because the city said, we're going to exempt it, even though that was unconstitutional, and we, VCPORA, had to file a lawsuit to get it reinstated.
Okay, so it is now reinstated.
Absolutely. It's been under VCC control again since the 1960s.
Okay.
But as a result, there is now developable land that really didn't have a lot of demand for it, you know, like when you were growing up, when I was growing up. And so now I have no doubt that, I'll let that be your word.
Yeah.
I have no doubt that there will be development interest, especially on the vacant lots along Rampart.
I like going to Mary's. I love
Mary's,
their.
That's the next block from us.
I love it.
And
go
it's
there all the
wonderful
time.
because there's such a cool mix of businesses on Rampart Street right now that are mostly residential or near residential oriented, like, you know, having a hardware store. We're next to a coffee shop, and on the other side we're next to a bar. Like, we really love our neighbors. We know everybody, and it's a great.
So I don't want to
business.
So I don't want to come in and be like, it needs to be developed. But man, that's so. With the streetcar, you got a streetcar, you got parking, you've got a 2-lane road. I think Rampart and St. Claude, and I've been using this term. I think it's going to be a magazine street on steroids. You got traffic, you've got parking, you got walkability,
right.
And hopefully for the rest of St. Claude, the streetcar is coming, and Rampart's got the streetcar on it now. It's beautiful.
Well, I can see a lot of good things happening on Rampart Street, but I do hope that the city, and I mean this,
you don't want it
all
to be,
levels, just make sure that the development in the
sense.
French Quarter benefits first and foremost the French Quarter as a neighborhood, because what we've seen is, you know, there's no. The commercial aspects of the quarter, the tourism industry in the quarter gets all sorts of support policy-wise, infrastructure-wise, and the residential element of the quarter really has not had any decisions or acknowledgement. Like, we've really got to make sure that we protect the daily lives of residents. We have to make sure that the residential base of the quarter
exists, because if it ain't a neighborhood, what is it?
Well, if it's not, if the residents leave, then it will become Disney World. The residents are what's preventing it from becoming Disney World. When you walk through the quarter, especially the lower end of the quarter, and it's just this amazing place, and you just have this special connection to the history of your city, it's because people still live there. There's still grocery stores. There's still a hardware store. These are not things that exist in Disney World.
Right.
So I hope that the city realizes that the development of Rampart Street needs to benefit the French Quarter as a whole, but that the residents need to be a huge part of that consideration.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. The next thing, of course, we're going to talk about the most famous street, not just in your neighborhood, possibly in the world, Bourbon. One of my favorite books, and I've said this, I don't know if I've said it before in the show, one of my required reading from New Orleans is Bourbon Street by Richard Campanella. I think it's a great book. And I'll spoil it. What he argues is that Bourbon Street is the most natural thing that happened, and maybe I'm not, but it grew up out of business owners over time. It's not governed by a board or anything.
Right. It's not a shopping center.
It's
where
not
everyone has to sign a lease dividing to do these certain things.
And other things like, say, Jazz Fest, that's sponsored by Shell Oil. Bourbon Street is not sponsored by anybody, but yet still becomes a worldwide brand.
It does.
And that's and that's a bad thing or a good thing? It just is what it is.
There's certainly arguments that can be made on both sides, but I will say that there has been a certain organic element of the development of Bourbon Street, but there have also been policy developments that have shaped the way it has come to be what it is today. Back in the 50s and 60s, all the doors were closed. There were barkers outside, and everything was behind closed doors. It was still a drivable street. Now the party is in the street. Doors are open. It's more of a street party. And those were conscious decisions by the city, as in terms of zoning and in terms of regulation. So, yes, a certain part has been organic, and the city responded, and I guess you could say that the city's actions were organic, and this whole process is what led us to where we are today. But I don't think that Bourbon Street, as it exists right now,
because the reality is this, and I'll help you out on this, because I'll say what you may want to say is that no one likes Bourbon Street. It's not even though it might be this natural organic thing, when people come to town, you say, I don't go see Bourbon Street. You know what I mean? There's
definitely not my recommendation.
Yeah, and it's no one's like, you've got to go see Bourbon Street.
I don't,
it's
and maybe it's because I live in a bubble, but
no,
people that I know do not say, when they have guests come into town, they don't say, you really need to go to Bourbon Street.
Right. So how does that change? How do we make it a natural organic thing, but then how do we make it something that the city can be proud of, because it's our worldwide brand?
Right. Well, we have long argued for enforcement of just the basics in the French Quarter, especially on Bourbon Street. T-shirt stop signage, big-ass beers, stuff happening in the street that shouldn't be happening, sanitation situation, which is cleaned up in the morning, but, pretty much all night, you're basically, hey, it's fine to throw stuff on the street. We've allowed an atmosphere to develop that encourages the kind of behavior that we really wouldn't put up with anywhere else. And if it were confined to Bourbon Street, that might be one thing. It still wouldn't be okay. But that is now becoming the brand of the French Quarter. And so, when we talk about residential concerns of the quarter, sometimes the response is, well, you moved to the French Quarter, what did you expect? The French Quarter is a neighborhood, and that's what makes it beautiful and special. It's mixed use. No one is arguing that there shouldn't be any commercial, development.
It's mixed use. That's the idea.
We just need to make sure that the residential element can coexist with those uses.
And if I've got a bar that's pumping bass until all hours of the night, I don't want to live anywhere near that.
If there's a festival every single weekend, you can't get in and out of your house.
Yeah.
We just need to make sure that we are respecting what has made the French Quarter so special for so long.
Because that's why people want to come visit.
Right. And the problems at Bourbon Street have not expanded just to the rest of the quarter, but even to Tremate and Marigny. There was an incident around the corner from me this past spring where a family reunion was staying in a short-term rental that was not legal because it was before legalization, and the grandmother flashed a second line in the middle of a Sunday afternoon because, hey, it's New Orleans.
Yeah.
It's just New Orleans. This is what you do when you're New Orleans. And, it's just...
And I've got a 2-year-old, and we go around here all the time, too, and it's just not something
we're not creating an atmosphere of respect for what makes New Orleans so special. Coming here to just get drunk, There's more.
And
There's more to our city.
And we have people that tourists that I talk to here, and they say, man, we came here, we drank, we partied or whatever, and on the last day I went and did this museum, or on the last day I went and this, we're coming back, I should have done this to get to go.
And
so,
those are the people that you hear from. There are a lot of people that you don't hear from
that never do it.
Right.
And they just go and whatever.
Right.
So to change that script, and the French Quarter, of course, is a living museum.
And the French Quarter will always be the main destination. And pretty much every tourist who comes here, especially for the first time, is going to come to the French Quarter.
Yeah.
But we need to make sure that we are presenting our greatest resource in a way that engenders respect and appreciation for it, rather than disrespect. And I do want to offer a statistic that I think will startle perhaps you, but your audience as well, because one of the things that we've been trying to get on the whiteboard, if you will, of the city is the need for tourism management. We have so many people coming here, and we have done a great job at exponentially generating more and more tourism for our city, but we haven't really looked at what the impact is and what we need to do. Are that many tourists beneficial? What is the cost to us, the city, the residents, the neighborhoods, our infrastructure? And I think Venice, for example, much larger city geographically than the Quarter, has about 60,000 residents. A few years ago, these are 4 or 5 year old statistics. So 60,000 residents, they get 20 million visitors a year.
Wow.
So for every Venetian, 333 tourists.
Okay, 333 tourists per
Venetian.
Per Venetian.
The French Quarter is 0.66 square miles.
Okay.
It's tiny.
Tiny.
On a very good day, it has 4,000 residents.
4,000.
And 4 or 5 years ago, we were getting 9 million tourists a year in the French Quarter. So for every French Quarter resident, 2,250 tourists.
At any given day?
Just in general.
Oh, in general.
Yes,
general.
Annually. These are annual figures. So Venetians 1 to 333, the French Quarter 1 to 2,250.
So for every one person that lives there are 2,250 people that
and
visit.
that has an impact on the infrastructure, that has an impact on the kinds of businesses and services that are available.
T-shirt shops, baby!
Well, I worked on Main Street in 1992 at a tiny little antique shop, and there was a Circle K on the corner, there was a laundromat. The block that I worked on was full of people who lived behind their shops, and there were all sorts of businesses that were geared towards serving the needs of residents.
Yeah.
And most of that stuff is gone now because the economics, and I understand, if you're a business, you can't stay in business.
I don't know how. The rents are high in the Quarter. How do the airplanes take off at Moyzant with all those T-shirts? I'm doing the numbers. I can't figure it out.
I'm not sure, but I will, if we can circle back to the short-term rental issue, because of the enforcement, there are now hundreds of apartments for rent and condos for sale.
That's great.
Presumably, it's hard to track this stuff
So
because the short-term rental platforms don't release their data, but real estate agents have told me, because of the enforcement, hundreds of units are now available. For residential use again.
So now's the time to move.
Absolutely.
If you want to live in the Quarter.
Have you ever thought about living in the Quarter?
I have thought about living in the Quarter. I just.
Now you have a 2-year-old.
I have a 2-year-old.
We got kids in the Quarter though.
If I could afford the Quarter, I would do it.
Well,
I'll look in.
How do you know you can't?
I'm hitting on Realtor. I'm getting on Realtor today. Meg, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. This is super cool. And the next time you have we did a big overview of the French Quarter here. But if you have an issue, a specific issue that's going on with the French Quarter, I'd love to have coffee with you again and focus in on it.
Okay.
Thank you so much,
Thanks,
Meg. I appreciate it. Take care.
Okay.